Hi, my name's Zach, and I'll be starting the probably 14 billionth YouTube channel that's not going to go anywhere. Um, the general purpose of well, here, let me introduce myself first, actually. I don't have a script for this, so I'm just kind of flying off the cuff and kind of hoping that nobody ever actually watches this. This is more for me to be able to process and record and add some accountability to the mix. I'm starting this channel, 10 Talent Trading, mainly as a check to my discipline. I'm only going to be recording probably like one a week, maybe even like one every 2 weeks. I don't want to add too much into the mix because these do take a little bit of time to kind of like sit down and process and talk through. And time's not something that I have a ton of right now. But I wanted to add this into the mix so that I can add some accountability to myself. To give context to the name 10 Talent Trading, just start right there. Like, why name something if it's just one guy managing his finances? Why start a YouTube channel? Like, why bother with any of that? Those are all really good questions, and you're all right. This is really silly to start a YouTube channel over something like this. It's really silly to have it named, 10 talent trading. It's just it's a little bit much for one guy with a $100 starting account, cash account, mind you, who's looking to day trade and maybe practice some other strategies and get into options and see what I've got on the finance side of things to be able to, um, well, grow into this sphere, I guess. Um, but to get into the context of 10 talent trading, I got inspired by a friend of mine in my Bible study who's doing a fantastic job at day trading. He follows Ross Cameron. I used to follow him quite a bit as well. For me personally, I used to put a little bit of time into studying him and watching his videos. Did a little bit of trading at a high school through Sure Trader back when that was a big thing, and kind of stepped out of it to jump into the building industry. And this friend of mine has been trading on a few different platforms, following Ross Cameron, and doing really well with it. He runs his own business, has some spare time in the morning, or I should say, makes time in the morning to do his stock trading first, and then goes and works full days on his own business. So he keeps himself pretty busy. Um, but he inspired me to jump into this, and not just from the perspective of, obviously, it's a venture and you're trying to make money with these strategies and to grow an account and to build capital. Like, that's obviously the main goal of jumping into something like this. But if you make it your main focus, at least this is my theory, kind of jumping into this and my thought. If you make that your main focus as you come into this, you're almost inevitably going to fail at the underlying. Um, you're going to fail at gaining the underlying real value to what a process like this can do for a person. Or at least that's my theory at the moment. Because tying into, taking a long time to get there, I know, but tying back into the name of it, 10 Talents Trading. If you, have ever delved into the Bible, New Testament, specifically like in Matthew is where I'm pulling this from today. The parable of the 10 talents. Geez, and I'll just probably, honestly, let's just read it. Why not? Let's just read it. If you haven't read it before, this will be probably super uninteresting to most people. But to me, I think it's amazing. If you have read it before, like in depth, you're going to know what I'm talking about. And I'll just start. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another two, to another one, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little, and I'll set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents here. I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, and I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the one talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you'd scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I had not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Pretty hard verse, pretty harsh. Um, but in delving back into this, because I'd heard this, dozens of times, and I've always kind of been captured by the different parables that Jesus put forward, and they're really great to sit on. If you ever just like, I've only got like 10 minutes to do my Bible reading today, like jumping into parables are really just, at least for me, one of the strongest places to go. And likewise, if you want to delve into the Old Testament in the wisdom books like Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, like that's a great place to like just find something and chew on it for the whole day. You only got 10 minutes. Like I have all these responsibilities. I got to run. You got 10 minutes. That's a great place to go. If you don't have time to really get into like a narrative arc somewhere in the Bible, those are great places to go. So this is something that I stewed on several times coming into this new season of life, where I've got kids and starting this small business a couple years back, and that's been running and somewhat smoothly, but has its lulls and has its difficulties. Just finances being intermingled into all of it. Like it just plays a huge part in every one of our lives. Where every day you've got to worry about, all right, am I making my bills? Am I paying for the things that I need to? Am I being generous with my cash? Am I performing well for God? Like, what am I doing for my family? What am I doing to better myself and to better the people around me? All in the financial context. Like it plays into everything. Um, and so watching this friend of mine, start really get into really get because I've watched him over a couple of years. Really get into the day trading and really get into the discipline of it and the patterns of it and really understanding it at a much deeper level than I ever had before. And sitting down and having those conversations with him really inspired me, because it's like even beyond like I mentioned earlier, the obvious goal of you're trying to make money. Like that's what you're doing with these accounts. You're trying to make money. Um, if that's your main focus, then I think you miss the real value in it, which is the same value that you can pull from the talents. That at the end of the day, um, especially for us Christians, at the end of the day, you're a steward of God's resources. That means God's air, God's food, God's money, God's time. You are um, you're a steward of that. And so I gave it a name, 10 talent trading, just so that it was up on the board every time I came to this. Because before, that's not where my position was. I traded a bit coming out of high school, insure trader, and um, back when it was a get rich quick thought for me. Like I had back when I'd say that I wasn't truly a Christian in the sense that I was giving my life to God. Um, and it was something that had kind of teased around in my brain and was curious about and played with, and gone to church as a kid. But now it's it truly is the biggest part of my life. Is God and the whole God family. People say God family country. I would say more like God family neighbors. But country kind of fits into that. I'm rambling a little bit. Sorry, I don't have a script for this. I'm kind of just flowing with the thoughts and what led me here, and just being honest with it. But to watch him steward his time so well, his discipline so well, because he's disciplined. My friend is disciplined in a lot of other areas. If you're listening, John, this is not a love letter to you, I promise, but I have to compliment you for everything you're doing. It's really fantastic. Uh, to have seen you grow so much into this over the last couple of years and really just focus on the discipline. Um, but back to Matthew here. the wisdom of the parable of the talents. Those he gives us two good examples and one poor one, and the one is given 5 talents, one is given two, and they both produce 100% return. And so a lot of people, you can look at it and say, well, they've both stewarded well. And it's almost like you always have to read into it with these parables, and they're left a little bit loose. I think almost certainly on purpose, because it's meant to be a narrative that speaks to all of us, and not just like a hard rule set like the law, like the Pharisees put together. But you've got one that's given five, and one that's given two, each according to their talent, each according to um, their abilities. I think is how it's each according to their abilities, and both come back with 100% return and give it back to their master. They stewarded it well. They stewarded their resources well, and the master's pleased with them at the end of it. And I think that the language following, where it speaks to come into your master's joy, it's worded exactly the same, or at least in the translation I have. I'm in the ESV, but it's worded exactly the same both times. And the way I take to read that is that God's just happy to see you steward what you have well. It's not at the end of the day. It's not about who's making the most money. A lot of um, Mormons will get this wrong, but it's not about how much money you have. It's not about how much you help other people in net. It's not about, oh well, such and such donated 500,000 to their local church, and they you know had all these events put together and these resources they pulled in, and that's fantastic, and that that's a good thing for these big hitters to go out there and do well for their local community. I don't think I'm speaking ill of it, but I just mean that there's not a distinction. God doesn't make a distinction there between the man who made five and the man who made two. I mean, other than I guess the man who had five ended up with the one from the guy who did poorly as well. But it's more about God just wants to see you steward your resources well. He wants to see you grow your discipline and your humility and respect for what God's given you. And I had not done this well before in trying to trade, and throughout the last few years and what we've done with our money and our time hasn't, at least it hasn't been optimal. And so what I'm trying to do here, to get back to the full point with this channel, is to add discipline, to add accountability to myself, and to kind of just document, for better or worse, the early stages of starting something like this. Um, this isn't all the money we have or anything like that. I'm delving into trading with the spare time I have in the mornings, with $100, so that I can learn how to do this well. We have other money that we just kind of throw into like our Roth and into um, some other investment accounts and stuff like that. So we're putting away and saving for the long term as well. But while I have spare time in the mornings, and while I have a friend who's good at this, who can mentor me, and while I have the ability to learn and to grow into this, I just figured this would be something that would serve my family well, and hopefully God well, um, to practice this discipline and to learn more about day trading, whether it be strategies put forward by Ross Cameron for his long positions that he's famous for, or jumping into options trading, or futures and equities, and what have you. It doesn't. I'm not tying myself down to anything here other than I want to steward my time well, and I want to document that, and I want to grow the resources that I have and the discipline that I don't have nearly enough of. Um, yeah. Okay. Sappy rant over. Now to like the practical of what this channel is. I think you probably gathered it by now. I've got $100 starting small. It's a cash account. Mainly the main play that I'm going to be running right now is going to be the same strategy that's the main strategy, I should say, that's put forward by Ross Cameron, with gapping up stocks that are usually between like $2 and $20, relative volume over 500%, usually up over 10%, news catalysts, share float under 20 million shares, and we're probably going to be trading mainly from like 30 minutes before the open at 9:30, from where I'm at here in Central Michigan, but 30 minutes before the open until say 10, 10 in the morning. Just kind of depending on what the market's doing, might go till 10:30, but mainly we're trying to wrap it up at 10 so that I can get back to my other work and work a full day still. Um, with self perform and the design jobs and stuff that I do for my own job. So that's the goal. We'll be in a cash account. So we can only, for those of you that aren't familiar with how that works, we can only make trades insofar that we have the buying power available. Like, so what you see now is we're coming off. I traded on Friday this previous week, just kind of farting around with it. Started with $100, got one of those free stocks in Robinhood for referring a friend, and made a little bit of money on a trade, just a simple setup on what did I trade? I think it was on JDZG here on February. What would that have been? 14th, 13th, whatever it was. Either way, so we can only trade with our full buying power, which on Tuesday, because today is President's Day or whatever day it is. So we currently can't trade. Market's closed for the day for the holiday, but it'll reset on Tuesday, tomorrow, and our buying power, once that previous trade from Friday settles, will be set to this 107 and 74 here. So we're starting the account ahead. Ahead $7 and 74 cents. Yeehaw. And I was kind of, where do I go from there? Well, it'll be reset. Point being, it'll be reset, and we can only trade with that total amount every day. So if a stock is worth $1 and we see a setup that we want to jump into, um, we have 107. Let's just pretend we have 100. Make the math simple. If I have $100 and the stock is worth one, I can buy in right there. I could buy 100 shares of that stock. And then my goal with the strategy that we're in is to sell same day, usually within a span of a minute or maybe three at the very most. So very, very short trading pattern for what we're doing to follow Ross Cameron here. If you haven't watched him, go check him out. I don't know how you're here watching this if you haven't seen him. But once that's sold, since we're in a cash account, it takes a day for that trade to settle. So if I, with $100 in buying power, purchase 100 shares of a $1 stock, I now have zero buying power. I'm out. So that when I sell that, it's going to take a full day for that to settle. So let's say I made, $10 on the trade. So I buy it at a buck, sell it at a buck and 10 cents. Yay, I've made $10. I now have $110 in the account, but I have no buying power. So this will be a little bit tricky with a cash account. It kind of puts me in a position where I can only effectively make one trade a day with a full account, or you can break it up. I'm probably most often, just depending on the setups and my confidence level and different setups, going to take a 70-30 approach where I will have a maximum of 70% of my account value that I'm willing to invest on any trade, which leaves me another 30 in case I see another setup, a little bit later in the morning. But generally, I say 70-30 because we're trying to, get these early trades, get out, and then get back to being productive in my job and my work. So it makes the most sense to kind of put it forward heavy. And we're really just here to learn. I mean, with this small account, it's just about building the discipline, building the practice up, gaining the skill set necessary. And even if I can only show a couple percentage points green on average every day. That's really what we're after right now. Because if you're faithful with a little, you can be faithful with a lot. And I might be, overusing that verse a little bit and saying that, but that stands true to practical purposes like this as well. It's like we're trying to grow an account, and if we can prove with this small amount that we're productive with it, and we know what we're doing, um, it stands to reason that we can scale this thing up over time and continue that practice going forward. Because at the end of the day, the real value is in the discipline. The real value is in the skills and the knowledge and the wisdom, um, and that applies to both spiritual practices and practical practices like this. So yeah, cash account makes it a little bit more difficult as compared to a margin account where we'd be able to trade as many times as we want with our account value over the course of the day, and even purchase on margin if we wanted to. But I'd really prefer not to mess with that. Again, this is really just about the skills. Kind of last thing to wrap this up, because I don't want these videos to take too long. I'm already way over what I wanted to be because I didn't at all set a guideline for how I wanted to do this first video, and I'm just kind of rambling at this point. Last thing I want to do is touch base on what my goals are. These are going to be ridiculous. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. Um, this is ridiculous. There's no way I'm going to make this. So just for context, I didn't really trade in January. Got really busy with work, and I planned to start on this, but kind of wanted. My initial thought was like, oh, I'll start with $500. Like I've done this before. I'll jump in with John, $500. And get on a margin account. Blah 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 blah. Really thought I was gonna like rip into it, and then things just got so busy, and cash flows were goofy for my main business coming through the new year, and so I just scrapped it for the month. So we didn't do any trading in January. We've done a little bit of trading in February. Um, excuse me, done a little bit of trading in February so far. Plan to do a lot more coming into it, and I built this out with the idea that all right, I'm going to punch in my number of days that I feel like I can trade. It goes down in the warmer months because that's when I get busy with my actual job. So I kind of figure that I'm going to get pulled away from this a little bit more. I'm going to be a lot more busy with, especially with like self perform projects. So put in the number of days that I can trade, probably for that month. My goal is for that. Put in my daily profit goals, like my average daily profit goal, win loss ratio, and the win loss differential. None of this really needs explained except for maybe like the win loss differential. This is just a factor between like how big are my wins compared to my losses. So right now, for example, in February, my goal is I'd love to get 15 days in trading. I've already got a few of them in so far. Uh, I'd like to reach an average daily profit goal of 2%. I would like out of every trade that I take that 55% of them are winners. And I would like my winners to be 1.5 times larger than my losses. And a lot of this just has to do with the strategies that we employ, where we get in on our setups, the actual technical work in the trading. And future videos will be more about that and less about general concepts and stuff. But going forward, I'm hoping to just do quick 5-6 minute recaps of how these played out for the day and where I landed. Um, and then we just walk away from it, post it, and it's just simple, clean, unpolished, nothing fancy at all. Just holding myself accountable to this, probably like once a week, once every other week. But back to the goals overall, I had just kind of punched that math in, and this really goes to show how absurd compounding percentages can just really blow things up fast. So right now, our goal for the month, my hope is that I can finish up February $27 up. That's my goal, and that's a lot. Don't look at that and think, wow, like all this time he's going to put in. He's going to put in 2 to 3 hours a day for 15 days in February. A grand total of let's say 2 hours just for simplicity. So I've got 30 hours to make $27. I'm not even making $1 an hour. What a waste of his time. Yeah, no, I agree. We're building up the practice. We're trying to figure out if this is viable, if this is something I can do. And I thought when I set this goal that it was um, pretty reasonable. 2%, not too bad. I mean, on the strategy we're pulling, I mean, I see Ross pull a whole lot more than that. Win loss ratio 55%. I mean, I understand the technical somewhat. I feel like I can get at least a little bit of an edge. Win loss differential of 1.5 times. Like that's I feel like that's setting the bar pretty darn low. Um, but even just carrying that same thought forward, and expecting my skills to get better. Maybe by about June, July, I've gotten good enough at this that my daily profit goal can go up to maybe like 4%. Slowly grow it to 4%. Our win loss ratio can maybe get like 0.6. So I'm winning 60%. My buddy right now is winning like 80%. On his win loss is about 80% right now. So I'm thinking, maybe I can get to like 0.7. This might actually be the most absurd part of my goals overall. This might, if honestly, if I can get 60%, you know what? Since we're talking about it, let's just do that now. Let's just do that. That makes more sense. Even if I can get that to 60%, that's fantastic. This should be totally achievable by that point. Um, it builds up to be quite a bit by the end. The kicker to this I had no idea when I had set these goals that was going to get to that point, but it really in the last few months goes to show how fantastic these kinds of compounding percentages can really rack up quick. So uh, in the back of my head, totally happy if I can get this thing to like 3K, 4K by the end of the year. Um, I think the biggest downfall of a goal like this is, and this is just generally how I set my goals. I'm almost always setting goals like one standard deviation to the right on that bell curve. Like if you because this is obviously like not mathed out the way you would math out uh, a prospect like this. Like if I was really wanting to get serious about this, I'd put this like on a normal distribution curve and give myself like a risk of ruin and all the different you'd see a fancy little bell curve of where this account ought land by the end of the year. But we're just going with the median. We're just going to keep it simple. I don't really feel like delving into all that math for something like this. So honestly, if I can hit 4K by the end of the year, I'm really happy. But based on the dailies that we've put forward here and win loss and the differential, I guess we're shooting for this. And then last thing, and there's nothing in here, so I'm not even gonna open this tab. But since you saw it, trading playbook, I'd like to build out like just a concise playbook so that I can write out the strategy, give myself some graphics, some rules that I have to follow. I'll actually probably end up doing this over on Word, just kind of piece things together. And for now, I'm just running with the one strategy. But my hope by the end of the year is to be able to kind of get into options trading a little bit. I've got a put option strategy that I'm doing a little bit of research on right now, so we'll play with that later. But long term goal, I'd love to build out like a playbook of a handful of plays that I favor, and give my own stats to them so that I can input wins, losses, and general information about trades that I've taken having to do with that strategy, so that I can kind of cater it to myself. Because at the end of the day, I think I've heard Ross say this recently with warrior trading. If you traded exactly like me, exactly when I do, exactly how I do, with all the same thoughts and processes that I utilize, um, you would you'd be trading the same way as me. Seems kind of obvious to put it that way, but every person's different. I think is the point he was trying to make. Like every person's different. Everyone's got their own temperament, their own risk profile, their own strengths and weaknesses in terms of their competencies and what they spot, what they don't see. So you know, build out my own trading playbook and cater it to myself and my strengths and my weaknesses so that I can set rules to protect myself from my weaknesses and give myself lateral movement for my strength. All right. I've already talked way too long on this. This is already a 30-minute recording. Goodness gracious. But that's the gist of what I'm doing with 10 talent trading, stewardship of money, more broadly hoping to grow this thing in the long term. But for now, accountability practice, humble beginnings, and a few probably ridiculous goals. Um, yeah, I'll leave it there for now. I think that's plenty for the day. So, thanks. If you're some wacko that's watching this video, or just a buddy who can totally pick on me for this anytime you'd like, um, appreciate it and have a blessed day.